you have some questions.
Thank you, man. You're welcome.
Folks, on behalf of the Isle of Wight NAACP chapter and the Carroll Civic League and the Central and Southern Isle of Wight Citizens Group and the Isle of Wight Citizens Association, I want to welcome you all here to our candidate forum this evening for the school board seat from District 2, or as it is known for decades, the Newport District. We have candidates Renee Dial and Mark Wooster, who are vying for this seat, and the election, of course, is on Tuesday, the 8th of November. To start with, I'd like to ask everybody to stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As you bow your heads for a moment, I dare say that the Lord will never mind us asking Him to bless us gathering here this evening. Almighty God, as we come here tonight, we pray that your presence will be with us, guide us in our deliberations and our candidates and their answers, and carry us all home safely to our loved ones when this is over. Thank you for your many blessings on us as a nation and as a county and as individuals and families. In your holy name we pray. Amen. A lot of folks have different ideas as to what school boards are about. Back in 1995, I got one of these from the Virginia School Boards Association. And Dr. Frank Barham, who was at that time the executive director of the Virginia School Board Association, he had put together this nice little manual that's entitled A Manual for Virginia School Board Members. A lot of people have different ideas of what school board members do, but basically, here are 3 things that school board members are responsible for: to adopt policies for the school system, to provide adequate means for executing them, and to see that they are executed. And it covers all kinds of little details from that. If anybody's ever interested, see me, I'll give you a copy of that page with all those little details. I'm going to ask Albert this time to quickly cover what the time limit restrictions are. Both candidates were advised of the procedure for this get-together and for the forum, but I thought it'd be nice to let the folks in the audience know these are the stipulations for answering questions, etc.
All right, sure, Herb, thank you. All right, here are the rules. Now, I'm the official timekeeper, okay? And the way this usually goes in any of these debates is I don't worry about the candidates, but sometimes in the audience, I tend to be the most heated person in the room. So in case anybody throws anything, I want you to know that I come fully protected and hold my civil defense up there. So you all pay attention out there. All right, here, when Herb starts off, each candidate is going to have 5 minutes to just sort of introduce yourself. You don't have to take the whole 5 minutes if you want, but up to 5 minutes to introduce yourself and say whatever you want. All right, and after we start, and Herb will have the cards and the questions that you all have submitted. If a question goes to a specific candidate, 3 minutes to answer, and then the other candidates get a 2-minute rebuttal. All right. Now, if the question is for both candidates, each candidate will have 3 minutes each to respond.
And in regard to that, we will alternate. If there's a question for both candidates, one candidate will go first one time, and then the other one will go first the next time that happens. That way, you don't have to feel like you're always in the position of having to make the initial statement or the rebuttal statement, because in the asking of questions of both is not really considered to be a rebuttal.
And you're going to keep track of that, because I'm going to have my
Yes.
days in my watch. And at the very end, at the conclusion, each of the candidates will have 3 minutes. And here's the way we'll sort of do it. When you have 1 minute left, okay, I'm just going to sort of wave this. I'm going to be right front, okay? If you start to go over, I'm gonna pick up my civil defense megaphone, and I may not say anything, you all may just see me, but if I have to say something like, please stop or something like that, but that'll be your signal that your time is over. Of course, if you really don't stop talking at all, I've got that, that, so, all right, that's all, thank you very much.
Thank you, Albert. Okay, in the tradition of fairness, we will flip a coin to see who goes first in their remarks. So, who wants to call it? As it is, take your pick, first or last. No, he's got his own microphone. So Mark, you get to make your introductory remarks first. It's already on, should be at green light.
Testing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, first I want to thank you, Herbie Groff, Mr. Burkhart, for hosting this forum tonight. It's going to be very informative. I do appreciate it. There's been a few questions which have been circulating, which contains a misdemeanor protective order violation on my record. I would like to address this now. Before agreeing to run for school board, I was very open about this issue. This occurred 10 years ago due to a combination of a very unpleasant divorce and a misunderstanding surrounding 3 physical addresses on a single plat of property that I own, while myself and my previous wife were residing on that property. My attorney quickly resolved the issue, and we have since both put this behind us in an effort to co-parent for our children. I think the main question in this election is what type of school system do we want for our Wight County, and what type of future do we want to provide for our children. We need a school system that is solely focused on providing an education for our children and preparing them for the future endeavors. A system that is free from divisive, inappropriate, sexually explicit material. A system that assures our children can obtain their education in a safe and secure environment, free from harm. A system that acknowledges indisputable rights of parents, values parental input and concerns, and encourages open communication in the education of their children. We can accomplish this by implementing a more in-depth review committee with clear-cut guidelines to review all books and media, and adding filters for internet access on all school-owned equipment. We can place SROs in all schools. We can have teachers and staff strategically placed during class changes. We can conduct an in-depth threat and vulnerability assessment of all schools in the Wight County to determine weaknesses and vulnerabilities in security and implement new security measures based on these findings. We can create a system that thrives on a combined educational staff with parental involvement and decision-making in the education of their children. These are all positive changes that can be accomplished for the benefit of our children, and I believe I am the person who can make these changes possible. Thank you.
Can you hear me? So I'm gonna take a different approach. I'm Renee Dial. A lot of people know me in the community, those that don't know me, and how I got here to this platform on the stage. So some of the words that come to my mind are drive, motivation, determination. And when I think of those words, I think about some of the successful things that I've done. And my most successful thing that I've done is getting into PA school, not finishing, but getting in. Obviously I finished. But what that looked like is, I don't give up. When I was, I didn't get in, that's my first time in PBMS. So I met with the director, I said, hey, why did I not get in PA school? He said, because your GPA is 3.4. He said, we weren't interviewing until you had to have a 3.6 or above. Your experience is there, but your grades aren't there. I said, well, what do I do? What do I need to do to get in? He said, well, you gotta go back, take 30 credits post-bac. Now I've already got my degree, went back, he said, not only that, but you gotta go back and get all A's. I did just that. I worked while I did that. So you need people, I don't give up. I fight for these kids. This is one thing that me and my husband, when I finished BA school, we came here to Carrollton. We built our life here, our home here. And I have 2 children right now that are in the school system. They've been in Carrollton from SPED all the way up to 3rd grade. They're now at Westside Elementary School. I'm a wife, I'm a mother. I came here, worked for Family Medical Care of Smithfield as a PA, did that for 5 years, took care of many, many families here in this community. I built so many relationships with the families here. They follow me to other places that I've been since being with Family Medical Care of Smithfield. I have a vested interest in this community. My kids will be here until they graduate. Me and my husband will be here until they graduate. So you're absolutely right. There are a lot of positive things that we can do with the school system. There's nothing wrong with the school system as is now. There's a lot of great things with the school system. Let's start with the CTE. CTE program is awesome. Dr. Thornton did a great job of starting it. It was his vision. It's one of the most sought after CTE programs. People visit it from all around the United States. They're coming to visit. Even Chesapeake, Virginia Beach. We are a very affluent area. This is just because Wight might be smaller in district size, it's actually a really, really good school system. I brag about our school system all the time. So on my platform, I do intend to expand the CTE program. In my life, I've learned a lot of stuff. I have a lot of knowledge that I know I can provide in one of those things in the CTE program, the nursing program, the CNA program, and they're also having, they're trying to expand the patient care service. They're trying to do something in that aspect. So I plan on working with Dr. Coleman to provide some type of input because there are other careers that people don't know about. I also plan on, we have to do better at retaining teachers. Pay, benefits are gonna matter. We'll get to that because I know one of the questions might be as far as how much we're spending. We're only spending 29%. We can definitely fully fund and expand that 29%. There are local districts that are spending 66%. Yorktown spent 44% over the standard of quality, and they're ranked number 3. So we have the capability to do it. I also plan on tweaking some of our policies that we have. Professionalism, there's some other things on policies that I would like to change, some benefit policies that I would like to change. Also getting more of our teachers involved as far as the shortage. There are some ideas, I've talked with educators about some of the ideas that we can do, programs, tutoring that we can expand and get some more teachers in the seats. But we also have to be comparable in salary. We have to want people to come to this area. So I plan on working with some of the teachers to figure out some ideas of how to get some of these teachers here. Also the diversity in the teacher pool as well. Also teacher support. We need to support our teachers. There's some ideas that I have. Again, I've talked with many educators about certain things that we can do for helping our teachers and support them. Support with the SROs. We can definitely have the funding to get the security, so that's also on my platform as well. So just to wrap up some of those things, those are some of the things that I know I can do. And I know I can help the school system achieve those things.
Thank you, candidates. This is a question for both of you, and we'll start with you, Ms. Dial. Each one of you has somewhat brought this to the front when you talked about what you were doing as school board members, but the specific questions are, what has motivated you to serve on the school board, and your qualifications to sit on the school board as you see them.
So I've kind of already spoke to my drive and determination for why I live in the school system. I live in the district. We have so since 2012, I believe, 2012, 2013. I've already given back to the community. I love this community. I plan on living here for a very long time. My kids are going to graduate from here, so that's some of my vested interests. I want the school system to do well. I did very well in the public school system. I am from Hampton, so not necessarily in Wight County, but I know that I can make a difference in this county as well. As far as my qualifications, I don't have a formal education degree. I do have my master's degree, so I've been through school. I went to Hampton High School. I finished at ODU with a bachelor's degree in science and a minor in psychology. And then I went on to EDMS and received my master's degree. Now, I host students as I have many students. We call it precepting. I precept many students. I've been doing that for the past, my 10-year career, for the past 6 years, actually more 8 years. I have a student right now as we speak. I've always been able to give back and give my knowledge back. So I feel like those are my qualifications. I'm a parent, so I have a parent perspective. Though I'm not a formal educator, I do teach to students that I have now with PAs, NPs as well. So those, I believe, are my qualifications, and I'm actually very intelligent. So I think we would want smart people on the school board, so that's also a qualification that I feel like I hold.
All right, for those of you that don't know me, I grew up in Wight County. I was born and raised, I'm third generation. I went through the Wight County school system. I've got 6 children, 4 of which have already graduated. 2 are still in the system, 1 is a senior, 1 is a junior. My background is in fire and emergency services. I'm a paramedic firefighter. I started EMS in 1985, and I am an instructor. I have a background in fire and EMS education. I've been teaching for 28 years. As far as the question of why I'm running, I've talked to several people, citizens, parents, and I've got the same thing from each one of them. They constantly tell me that the current board does not listen to the concerns of the citizens or the parents. So I got involved. I started going to the school board meetings, and I started witnessing this happen firsthand. So when citizens and parents have comments and they have legitimate concerns, I was witnessing everything pretty much fall on deaf ears. I was also asked to run for school board by a few parents. Now, this is not something I take lightly. So I thought for some time. I discussed it with my wife and finally decided to run. Is Wight County School a good system? It is. But there's a lot of improvements that can be made. And again, I don't have a formal background in high school education per se, but I cannot tell you how many countless number of people I have trained as far as fire and emergency services go. I do feel I would be a good benefit for this board, and I do feel that with different options that we've got available, we can make the system better. Like Ms. Dial touched on, expanding the CTE program. One thing that I would like to do is add in fire and emergency services. That is a field that is very short-staffed right now. I can use my department alone. We are working overtime nonstop. We have 21 people in my district to cover 26 positions. It's a very wide range and it's a very lucrative profession. So based on that, I do believe I'll be a good fit. There's other things that I want to talk about, but I believe that will come up later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wooster, we'll do this question with you first for both of you. But the recent governor's message regarding transgender students and putting out transgender guidelines, what services would you suggest putting in place to deal with the anxiety and depression that may come along with a change in the existing guidelines relative to transgenderism?
Okay, I know there's a lot of controversy and issues surrounding transgenderism in schools. First thing I want to state is I don't want to see any student isolated, secluded, or made to feel inadequate. That is the last thing I want to happen. With the new policy that is supposed to go into effect at the end of October, it does change things. And from what I've read, it's involving pronouns, use of pronouns that will not be allowed. The student's name will be what is on record. As far as bathroom issues, I do not agree with unisex bathrooms unless they are single stall locked units. I've said that before. The reason for that, it's a safety issue. Now, without excluding anyone, we need to make accommodations for each and every student. With the new order, we must follow that order, plain and simple. The only exception would be the bathroom rule which I would say have one stall, lockable doors.
So pertaining to the anxiety and depression, I treat anxiety and depression. I do that in children all the way to geriatrics. We need to get the counselors involved in that as well, to help, and with the instructional aspect that we got as far as the funding for the teaching, the testing coordinators. So that will free up the guidance counselors for them to be able to reach out to some of these students, because they actually do need a lot of help. We need to support our students. We do not need to exclude any of our students. I am all absolutely want us to support all of our kids, and as the recommendations come down from the state, we will make sure that we meet with the superintendent. I already have about my concerns about the safety. I want to make sure that all the students are protected and supported as these policy changes occur. And actually, when they're implemented, we need to make sure that we continue that collaboration with the superintendent and the staff, because it's the teachers and the staff. It's not just one thing, it's both. Everybody has to work together to make this happen. As far as the bathrooms, I actually agree with Wooster. We actually had I don't know how far ago it was when we had our board meeting. We actually had pictures of them being private bathrooms. There is options for them to have private, single stall, private bathrooms. And I think that is a good thing, because we're only just talking about transgender, but what about the kids that are being bullied, picked on? Some of the bathrooms are unsafe in general. Like, we can prevent some of vaping. We have issues with drugs in the bathrooms as well. So I think there's some open stalls and there's single stalls. So if you look at the designs of some of these new bathrooms that can accommodate all students, we have to accommodate all of them. So I think that we're onto something as far as I agree with Wooster in the fact that we do have the option of having single stall private bathrooms. Not getting rid of, we'll still have male and female bathrooms, but that is an option, and there were some designs. So I would have to go back and see which board meeting that was that we actually went through that, but there were some designs that were really, I actually would have used them myself and not used a stall. Some people are very uncomfortable with stalls and urinals, so I think some privacy would be needed for all of the students, not just a select few, all of the students.
Thank you.
Another question for both of you, and Renee, we'll start with you. What is your plan to bring children
Who were left behind during the COVID epidemic academically, get them back up to the level they should be at?
That's a good question. That's a tough one. We already had a gap in achievement. As far as, I know, looking at the board meetings, we already had some gaps between, unfortunately, different ethnicities being a little bit further behind. We need to use some of our funding though. There's some districts out there that are using more tutoring and getting back to the basics. We need to get back to reading, writing, arithmetic, getting these kids up to par on just the basics. I love STEM as well, but we need to get back into tutoring. I think some of the funding that some of the other districts have used is after-school tutoring and accommodating and actually incentivizing some of the teachers for that and paying them for that time. So I think that's one of the ways, is getting some of those tutoring programs out there to help these children to get back up to par. As a parent, I also think some support with the parents. Because I've had issues with Canvas myself and trying to get on. I have a parent Canvas app, so actually allowing the parents to help the kids. I was trying to help one of my neighbors try to get on the app, and for some reason she can't get on. So I think helping the parents help their kids as well, that will also help, and encourage the parents to help their children as well. So I think we can do it from both ends. Tutoring programs as well as the teachers and helping them.
Okay, I think we can all agree that the pandemic was a major issue in creating that gap. I've looked at different percentage numbers, and anywhere between 27 to 39% failure rate is just unacceptable for the SOLs. I will agree on what you said though. We do need to get back to the basics with the reading, writing, math. But the question is, what are we going to do to get these children up to an acceptable level? What we need to do is look into other programs that can be implemented to improve on these children's grades. Without doing so, we are failing these children. Now, whether it be a special program that is already in existence or a new one that needs to be sought after. But that's one thing that we need to do, and we need to do it now for the benefit of the students.
Another question for both of you.
And Ms. Dial touched on this a little bit, but Mark, if you start off, what should the parent-teacher relationship be, and how can the school board as a group or even individual school board members foment a good relationship between teacher and parent?
The parent-teacher relationship should be a cohesive unit. A unit that is able to work together, listen to each other's points of view when dealing with their children. Now, I'm not saying that there are any teachers that don't listen, but at the same time, you have to respect the parental rights in the involvement of the education of their children. You cannot keep anything from the parent, and in turn, the parent will ultimately make the decisions. Now, dealing with the parent-teacher relationship, I have said this before, and it has a tendency to offend some people. But the bottom line is, excuse me, parents need to get back to being parents. Okay, stop trying to be their best friend. Hold children accountable, teach them values, and make sure that they understand that there are consequences to their actions. Whether it is something as simple as not doing an assignment or, creating a disruptive classroom. Parents need to make their children accountable. But that, in my opinion, would be the perfect relationship between teacher and parent. One that keeps the parent constantly informed, and the parent handles everything at home and makes sure that the child acts appropriately. As far as what the board can do, we can sit down, we can meet with teachers, we can explain, what is expected. Everything is community involved. Reach out to parents. Have special meetings where the parents come in and just voice their concerns. Again, going back to what I said initially, that's one of the big issues that I've been hearing from everybody, is that the board does not listen to parental input. So that's my standpoint.
So my stance on, they're equal. As far as the teachers, when the kids are in school, the teachers are teaching our children. And when your kids are home, that's when your you always have parental rights. Those never stop. But I really had a better appreciation for teachers when the pandemic hit. I don't have time. I work sometimes 8-10-hour shifts. So I appreciated the teachers actually teaching, and I'm going to allow them to teach. They're open. I can look on Canvas and see every assignment my child has. I can look at their grades. I can see everything that the teacher is already doing. So I think it's already a great relationship between the parents and the teachers. We have Parent-Teacher Association. That's been ongoing for years. Those parents that want to participate more fully, then that allows them to do that as well. In the aspect of the board not listening, there are different roles. You named some of those roles that the board is responsible for, but the superintendent is also in charge, and that's his staff, and it goes down. There's a hierarchy. So you have the board, you have the superintendent, and he has his staff. And his staff are the principals and then the teachers. So to say, there's nothing wrong with having a forum. However, we all have different job duties. When I'm at my office, I'm not doing the job duty of what the lab tech is doing. That's what the lab tech is doing. So we actually place the policy in place. We hire and fire the superintendent. We deal with the budget. Those are some of the main ones that we do. But implementing in the day-to-day, that's why we hired a great superintendent. Dr. Kramer's going to do an awesome job. And I feel like we need to allow him to do his job.
After this question, I'll turn it over to Mr. Stewart to ask the next questions for a while. For both of you, and Ms. Dial, will start with you. Please explain your understanding of representative government as an individual who sits on an elected board, and what responsibilities do representatives have to the people to respond to their concerns?
So we're always available. We have cell phones, I have an email. So those of my constituents that have questions, I usually will forward my questions. If it's dealing with implementing or anything as far as, dealing with the staff, that's with the superintendent. If there's some things that I can help facilitate, I'll do that. I've had people reach out to me, even beyond my work hours, even beyond 5 or 6 o'clock. I've had calls at 9 and 10 o'clock, and people are asking me, where do I go to? So I help them out there. So I'm always open. I'm always open for anybody asking me questions where I can facilitate. I do where I can. I'm at the board meetings. We're making sure that we're supporting our superintendent. So that's, as an individual, that's what my job is, as being a board member.
As a board member, you are representing the constituents in your district. It is your responsibility to answer every phone call, every email. Now keep in mind, not one single board member has the authority to operate independently. So no, board members cannot make individual decisions. The board operates as a whole. However, you represent the citizens in your area, and you are ultimately accountable to those citizens. So you need to have a working relationship. If somebody sends you an email of a concern, then yes, I agree, you do pass it on to the person who would handle such a situation. But you also need to respond back to that person, letting them know that you have forwarded the email, or whether it be a telephone call. Make sure that they are informed that their concerns are being answered, not ignored. Because it may be perception, or it may be real. If the person feels like they are being ignored, nobody's going to be able to tell them any different.
Thank you to you both. Let me just say, before I ask the next question, what a great display of democracy in action tonight. We all choose sides as we have to in politics and make our decisions, etc. But something we all have in common tonight is an interest in good government, participative government. And so it thrills me to see citizens come out, to see two people put themselves forward for public office. What a thankless job that can be sometimes. I would never sign up for it, no doubt. So I'm thankful for just terrific participation in our democracy. We have a lot of questions. My rough count was about 60 that obviously will not all get asked in the time allotment we have. What you should know is that two moderators said we saw these about 5 minutes in advance. First time we saw questions. And so what we have to do kind of on the fly here, Herb, I think you agreed, Herb's already started, is we have to do some consolidation. So for example, I counted roughly 10 questions about transgender policy. So if you don't hear the question asked exactly the way you phrased it on your card, be mindful of the fact that we want to cover as many topics as we can tonight. And so you may not hear your question the exact way you phrased it, as we try to cover as many topics as we can. So now back to the questions. Considering that some, if not most, students are bright enough to articulate their opinions and views, will you, and if so, how will you, gather the opinions of those who actually attend the schools? What will be the students' input? What will be the teachers' input? And I think on this we're starting with Mark. Who started last time?
I did.
So Mark, you go first this time.
Could you repeat that question for me, please?
Yes. Considering that some, if not most, students are bright enough to articulate their opinions and views, Will you, and if so, how, will you gather the opinions of those who attend the schools? Where will be the student input? Where will be the teacher input in your decision making?
I'm assuming we're still on the transgender topic?
No,
We're not.
this has nothing to do with, well, let's put it this way.
I'm trying to
I
understand.
should
the
not
question.
read anything into the question as written, but no, this never mentions transgender policy. I think the gist of the question is, do students' opinions count in your decision making? Do teachers' opinions count? We've heard a lot, we're going to hear more tonight about the importance of parental participation. I'm thinking if the person who wrote the question, speak up, and characterizing it wrong, but they want to know how, whether, and if so, how, listen, students and teachers in your decision.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for me. Yes, most definitely. Students' input and their personal feelings does matter. How would you go about finding out? Or how would you go about dealing with it? Obviously, you ask. Okay, depending on what the topic or what the situation is. You can hold meetings, you can get the counselors to speak to the students to find out where their points of view are. Depending on the topic, you want everybody's input. You know, you want teacher input, you want parent input, you want student input. And counselors would be a good route to go with that, to determine exactly where the students are, how they feel, what exactly do they want to see. Once you gather all of that information, then you make an educated decision on it. What is going to be overall best for the students? Because that's what it's all about. It's what's best for the students.
Thank you very much. Ms. Dial.
I do agree with the guidance counselors. That is an option there. Also, we also had one of our student representatives that was on the board meeting. She's now at Virginia Tech. But what she would do at the end of each board meeting is that she would go around. She was at Smithfield High, and she would go around and ask some of her classmates certain questions. And so they would poll, and like for instance, one topic was the dress code. So, yeah, as a parent, I'm like, I don't know about the kids' input as far as dress code, because I know they want us to be a little bit more lenient. But yes, we can involve the students by actually having polls and have maybe one of their own peers go around asking questions to try to see what topics do you guys want to discuss, what things would they like us to discuss, like as parents or as far as in board, at our school board meetings. So we can definitely get student involvement. They're very important. It's about them. We want them to succeed. So how can we help you? Let us help you. So we can do that as far as that's an option as well, getting their peers to participate in that. As far as the teachers, I'm open. Like, there's open communication with teachers now. We can do coffee and conversation and have teachers kind of give us input on what some of the things that they would like to implement, or some of the ideas that they may have for their classrooms and for their students. Some teachers like class books, textbooks, some don't. So I think we can get input from both sides, and everybody can do this together. The parents, the teachers, and the students, but everything is for the students. So there's different ways we can get input from both.
Thank you to you both. We had probably a dozen questions related to equity, inclusion, social justice, what some would say the politicization of schools, bringing politics in the classroom. I'll read maybe 3 or 4 of them to give you a gist, but I think they're all seeking your views along the same thing. You believe public schools should be involved in social and political issues, or should they stick to academics? Who do you believe is responsible for instilling morals in students? Is it the school system, or is it the parents? Do you believe that political opinions by teachers and staff should have any place in the school system? Will you support the continuation of equity initiatives in schools? I think those all kind of fall under the same umbrella. So speak to your views on social justice, equity, and inclusion, the role of the schools, teachers, etc., in those topics.
Yeah, that's a definite hot topic as far as, everybody's cultural beliefs are a little bit different. Religious beliefs are different. You don't want to touch on anybody or step on anybody's toes. That's really kind of difficult in this kind of climate that we're in. But I think if we just keep open communication with the teachers, allow the parents to have input, the teachers to have input. Some topics are going to be a little hot than others, but I think we need to have a discussion, because I think we wouldn't be in the climate that we're in if we had more of a conversation about what's going on. Because when these kids get out and they graduate, they're going to be in that world. And so we need to prepare our children. And if, like I said, the parent doesn't want to opt out, that's fine. But I think we should have some sort of conversation. Some topics are going to be a little hot more than others. But a lot of parenting at home, my beliefs, there should be no politics. I'm not running on a political agenda. I have none. I am just me. I want to do what's right for the kids. You're not going to treat anybody different. So if somebody's Democrat, you're going to treat Republican. Kids don't even have political beliefs. They're usually taking on the political beliefs of their parents. They're very impressionable. So I'm not going to treat anybody different if my beliefs are a little bit different. We have to learn to accept certain beliefs, and I'm for all the children. This is public school. You're going to run into all different types of people, cultures, beliefs. One's not better than the other, and I'm not here to judge anybody's political beliefs. That has nothing to do, it has no bearings. So I'm just running for all the kids to be supported, be able to voice their concerns, be able to voice what they want to do, and I want them to be successful. So no, politics has no place. I'm not running on a political ticket. Again, it has nothing to do with the schools and the kids. How on earth can you treat all the kids the same if you're trying to hold on to a political ticket about one certain viewpoint? You have to be for all of the children. My political beliefs has nothing to do with me supporting kids.
Mr. Wooster.
I'm on the same standpoint as you are. Politics does not belong in schools. Then again, neither does any type of divisive material. Everything needs to go back to the basics, stay out of politics, and teach the children what they need.
We had some questions directed to a specific candidate. I'm going to do one each for each of you. Turn it back over to you. Mr. Wooster, you mentioned the explicit and sexual behavior in books. What about the behavior in schools? What will you do if you find out that books aren't the problem?
It could be books, it could be media, it could be anything like that. However, if what you're referencing would be the students themselves, then you need to follow proper policy as far as disciplining those children. Now, whether it be suspension, temporary suspension, expelling the student, whatever the policy states is what you need to follow, because the students obviously need to understand that there are consequences to their actions.
Clarification, Herb, when the question is to a specific candidate, is there any rebuttal? There is. Renee, would you like to respond?
Can you state the question?
Sure. I'll turn that one over so that Mr. Wooster, you mentioned the explicit and sexual behavior in books. What about the behavior in schools? What would you do if you find out that books aren't the problem?
That's a lot of parenting too. We need to make sure that we're showing our kids right from wrong. We all have a moral compass. That's where I base my day in and out. Again, no political beliefs, but just basically what's right and what's wrong. And so that's where parents need to step up. We need to make sure that we're teaching our kids to respect everybody and to behave accordingly. That's all.
Directly to you, Ms. Dial, we have at least three, maybe more, mostly on the stack citizens who noted you're declining to ask, or excuse me, you're declining to answer, sorry, several direct questions posed by the Smithfield Times and candidate Q&A. You're citing your reason saying that those were divisive questions and that you prefer to build. So one citizen wants to know, would you be willing to answer tonight those questions that you declined to answer in the newspaper article? Another says, if transparency is important to you, why not answer those questions? All right. Third one phrased it. Explain how you would build. If your desire is to build, how would you build as it relates to unisex bathrooms, unspent school funds, which I think was one of the questions, compensation plans for superintendents. I think you get the gist.
So one of the questions is about the superintendent, and let's debunk this, it was a blank check. Let's break this down, okay? So I've been eager to answer this question so we can put to rest. When Dr. Thornton and we amended his contract, it had to be unanimous, so all 5 board members did that. So on his contract, it said that we would pay him out his sick leave, full per diem, okay? The second line with the blank was irrelevant. Per legal counsel, they would just left it out. But the blank, we did not know how much sick leave Dr. Thornton would have. He stepped down, he turned his leave in, he said he was gonna retire in March. His last day was gonna be June 30th. We don't know how many days of sick he was gonna take. Per policy, he was under the 250 days. So, now, let's get back to the full per diem. So, it ended up being they're equating full per diem to full daily rate, but that's actually interchangeable. I contacted the legal counsel and I said, well, how is full per diem and full daily rate the same thing? She says, because you're gonna have a hard time proving, because of the previous payouts from the superintendents, that it does not mean full daily rate. So the previous superintendent payouts absolutely made a huge difference. I was not on the board for those previous superintendents getting paid out. Let's start with Pereira. She was paid out about $56,000. Let's go back one notch back there, McPherson. Herb DeGroff was on the board when he got paid out $81,000. And it said miscellaneous beside it. So I don't know what miscellaneous means. I don't know if that was sick leave. So needless to say, now we know that full per diem meant full daily rate. Now let's do some math, okay? So Dr. Thornton had 940 hours of sick. Let's convert that to days. He had 117.5 days. So his daily rate was $777. He was making over $186,000 a year. So let's calculate $777,000 times 117.5. It comes out to be $91,000. So there was no blank check. That was what he earned, okay? So let's start with that, okay? In the state of Virginia, you can transfer your leave from district to district. That's what he did. He transferred from the previous district he was in. That was what the state allows. Now, our new superintendent's from Maryland, so he will have 0. And that's not how his contract is structured. So let's put that to rest. He didn't get a blank check. He got based on what he earned that time. And because previous boards paid out other superintendents, put us in this position. So now that's one of our ways that we can actually change policy. Are we going to keep it as is? That's something that the board we've been discussing.
Time, please, Ms. Dial.
She just answered the question.
Okay.
You don't know how to do math.
Okay. Order in the room.
Ladies and gentlemen, they're the ones answering the questions and making statements and all.
She's part of us.
Way cool. Unless you're running for office, please.
So, sir,
All right.
that was one of the questions, right? That was one of the questions the card asked me to add to answer one of the questions, and they said my time was up.
Yeah, generally regarding not answering the questions from the newspaper. So the time is up on this particular one, and I think we're gonna get to some of those other topics. But generally, would you be willing to answer tonight the questions that you would not answer from the newspaper? To the extent we get to them here, you will be. Okay. Now, Mr. Wooster, you get an opportunity on rebuttal, even though the question was directly to Ms. Dial regarding her not answering several of the newspaper questions.
Okay, I don't have much to add to that, but when I answered the question, I referenced the school policy GCBD-R, which that does detail the leaves and absences. It details the accrual, use of, and payout upon separation, retirement, accrual, and annual and sick leave. The policy's in place. That I wasn't there. I cannot attest whether it was followed or not. Now, with that being said, the one thing I've got a difficult time wrapping my head around is how you can actually make a vote on a topic with a blank amount.
This question is for both of you. Budgeting is one of the primary duties that school board members have. And the board has repeatedly spoken to being transparent. There are those who talk about the school board budget
In a meeting, line items. Well,
within the school board budget, 7 categories, there are line items. However, what would you do to ensure transparency so that taxpayers have a complete picture of how their tax dollars are being spent, so that at any time they could look at the budget and see exactly how their money is being spent? And Ms. Dial, you went first the last time?
Yes, so Mr. Wooster, this time.
I've said before, I believe in complete transparency. The budget was one of the biggest issues that you need to be transparent about. As board members, you have to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. You have to assure that it's not being spent frivolously. Line items are a definite necessity. Everything needs to be spelled out in detail. Now, it's my understanding that the CIP is currently under review, and citizens' input is going to be coming up soon. I don't remember the exact date, but the citizens' input is going to be coming up pretty soon to provide, ideas, what they want to see in the budget. But everything needs to be presented readily available to the public. Have community involvement. Never withhold information. And any time that the money is spent, it needs to be itemized, put in a location online where people can research it and they know exactly what they're paying for.
So, we are transparent. They do have line items. I have a huge book of budget of what each number is for, what each charge is for, what everything is for. It's already laid out. Matter of fact, when we had our meeting, I think only like 2 people showed up. When we had input, we asked for input. Colleague was there, Cunningham was there. We had like 3 people that showed up. So we do, and it's streamed. So if you wanted to have input, you could have watched the video, you could have put your input in there. We are transparent. So I don't know how much more transparent you can get. Yeah, we can get involvement. The CIP is with the Board of Supervisors. Let's speak to spending a little bit. So we're actually very great at spending. If you went to our last board meeting, we actually only spent 29% over our quality of learning, our quality of standards. That is the lowest out of the districts that we compare that were comparable to us. Yorktown, Gloucester, Southampton, they spent way more money than we are. We haven't spent, we can fully fund these schools. We can fund our school system. We have the money. Our actual, our composite index, we are a very fluent area. Our composite index actually was second after Gloucester. We're actually a little bit more affluent than you would think, like a Chesapeake. So we have the money. And so what we're getting from the state is based on our composite index, the value of our property, retail sales, and gross income. So we actually are doing a great job of being financially, fiscally responsible. But we can spend some more money because we have it. We can definitely put more money in our school systems. 29%, and the next district, Yorktown, spent 44%. I wonder why they're a little bit higher up in rankings than we are. We can spend some more money.
This next
It
question.
is for both of you and is along the line of spending. The Board of Supervisors delayed appropriating about $1.5 million initially to the IWCS system. Eventually, they have kept just $600,000 in an escrow fund going forward. There are calls for accountability, looking for problems that are possibly non-existent. Can you comment on that as to whether or not this was a wise move on the Board of Supervisors' part, and just how badly did the IWCS system need this $1.5 for the $800-some thousand they eventually gave you out of the escrow funds? Ms. Dial?
So that is one of the questions that the Smithfield Times journalist asked me. So to those who wanted an answer for that as well. So again, we have the money. We are being transparent. And we wanted to spend the money on the SROs. I don't know anybody that does not want SROs. We have the money, it's there, whether you're withholding it. I don't know why it's being withheld because the money is already there. So we were asked, do we want vestibules or do we want SROs? I want both. I have kids in the school system, I want both. We can afford both, and that's what I want. So when you ask me that question, that's my answer. So if it's involving safety, yes, we need to spend that money, and that money will be well spent with the security. My kids attend West Side. My kids were at Carrollton. I don't care how close it is to the next countering EMT. That's a deterrent. If somebody is there present, my kids are important. All the kids are important, safety. And so I want both.
Okay, on that issue, I did answer that question. I supported the Board of Supervisors' decision in withholding the funding. And the reason for that is they had requested a previous joint board meeting between the Alloway County School Board and the Alloway County Board of Supervisors and was denied. I don't see why two governing bodies can't come together and discuss a budget. I really don't. So yes, that's why I agree with it. You know, every board member must be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. That's part of your responsibility. Now, when it comes to safety, yes, we're once again in agreement. Where the school vegetables, great start. SROs, I want to see them in every school. But I've got one question on August 11th. If you are all for school security, why did you vote against the threat assessment and vulnerability that John Colley had proposed?
That's false as well. I didn't.
Ma'am.
Okay.
You already had your opportunity to get the rebuttal. Okay, thank you. Next question, and we'll start with Mr. Wooster. Conflict exists in school amongst students. Every now and then, teachers get hurt trying to break up fights and that sort of thing. What is your position on students who constantly cause problems in school and allowing them to continue to attend at the expense of students that do follow the rules?
If you've got students that are constantly causing issues, now I'm assuming the question is still occurring after intervention has been taking place. Is that my understanding? Okay. So if a student is constantly causing problems, and after, continual interventions, discussing things with the student, trying to find out what the root cause of the problem is, I hate to put it this way, but the only option would be to possibly relocate to another school or expelling the student, which I don't want to see anybody expelled. But you can't have a single student disrupting the classroom environment for all other students.
Thank you. Next question, Ms. Dial, we'll start with you.
Oh, that was just
Or
a
you
starting
get to
with like
rebut
the
that.
same, right.
Yeah, you get to rebut that. Sorry.
So one of the things is we need to figure out what's going on with the student. It's not always the student is a bad student. What is going on when the student's home? What's causing them to act out? There might be some underlying things. I've noticed that when we've been in meetings and we've had to make the determination on whether we were going to expel a child, suspend them, put them in alternative school. Actually, alternative school for some kids actually have been in their favor because they have more one-on-one attention with the teachers. So some students have thrived a little bit in that aspect. So we have had to make those kind of decisions. But as far as the joint meeting, we actually had a joint meeting last week. So we've already been in the works of doing that, trying to get the funding for these SROs and vestibules. So that meeting actually did take place. And actually to the question again about not putting it on the agenda, I wanted to wait until the superintendent put his input, and that's exactly what I sent Hulick. I was not opposed to it. That's his thing. He loves to do security and safety. I'm okay with that as well. But with the new superintendent, we need to get him involved as well and have his input. So I told him I didn't mind it being on the agenda, but I think he should get input from the superintendent as well. So that was also one of the questions that keeps arising, that I don't want safety. I don't know why I wouldn't want safety in the schools that my kids attend. So, and if you want to ask Hulick, did I send that email? You can see the email that I sent him that was absolute, that's false.
Thank you. Ms. Dial and Mr. Wooster, this is for both of you, and I'll start with you, Ms. Dial. This is sort of a multifaceted question because it goes around a little bit about what was talked about once before, but the relationship that parents have with their children, the responsibility that parents have to their children, how can we ensure or encourage parents to monitor the websites and books that their children are looking at and reading? And along that line, is there something the school board or the school board association as a whole should be doing to make publishers rate their books, movies, etc., just like a lot of TV programs are? And what is your position on that, please?
That actually came up when I was speaking to one of the constituents actually in this room, as far as should the books be rated, should the authors be required to rate their books. Right now, I really don't have a stance either one way or the other, as opposed to as far as them rating their books. However, as a parent, I'm sitting down with my kids when they're on their Chromebooks. I'm actually seeing what they're doing. My kids aren't doing more than what is asked of them on the Chromebook, so they have their own separate device. So if they want to go on YouTube or do something else that I'm allowing them to do, they do that on their personal iPads that they have. As far as the Chromebooks, we use it exactly for what it's intended for. We go on Clever, we do IT math, we do other things, but we're doing exactly what the teacher's asking us to do. So I'm a very involved parent, and I just say parents need to be more involved in their children as far as when they're doing their homework. I monitor my kids when they're on their devices. We do have filters in place. Susan Getz has spoken to that. The IT director, Coop Ryder, has spoken to that, putting filters. We've put several filters on. If you're putting more and more filters on, I'm definitely okay with filtering. Some to the extent of, at what point, if you have access to Google or you have access to search engines, I don't know if you can fully filter every single thing, but we do a great job as of now of doing a lot of the filtering. Matter of fact, I think something came up, not sure, I asked Dr. Kramer, but something, I don't know if it's inappropriate or not, Dr. Kramer said it was of nothing like that, but they removed it. So actually, the staff is very open to the parents wanting certain things removed. Matter of fact, when some of the parents were concerned about some of the apps, we offered to take it off of their child's device. That was an option. You can take it off of your child's device. That was their parent choice, and they exercised that right.
We all know that kids will be kids. Can everybody agree with that? When a child is at home and they're utilizing their own devices, accessing the internet, it's the parent's ultimate responsibility to control what they're viewing, what they're accessing, and what they're being exposed to. Now, I will differ my opinion when it comes to being in school and on school devices. In school, on school devices, you need to have filters. You need to have blocks. You need to do everything possible to prevent children from being able to access inappropriate, sexually explicit material, whatever the case may be. That is the responsibility of the school. When they're at home, it's the parent's responsibility. There's two different avenues there.
Thank you. Mr. Wooster, we'll start with you for this question for both of you. Virginia, there are over 140,000 students who attend private school and over 60,000 who are homeschooled. I'd like y'all's position on homeschooling and the fact that I think about 200 children in Wight County are homeschooled. What is your position on homeschooling since the school board has to approve a child being allowed to homeschool for whatever reason?
My opinion on homeschooling, providing the parents are capable of providing the education, I'm all for it. I will not fault anyone for teaching their children at home.
I agree. There are different options. Homeschooling is an option. If you want full control of what your children are learning, homeschool is an option. So there's also public school and there's private school. So I'm definitely, we've never declined as a board ever homeschooling. We approve them all the time. I'm okay with homeschooling. I'm not opposed to that at all. I think it's a good option. Again, if the parent wants full control of everything that their child is learning, I think that's maybe the best option for them.
This will be my last question for now for both of you, and then I'll turn it back over to Mr. Stewart. As we know, Wight County Schools has a little better than 5,600 students in it as of the 30th of September this year. In 2000, Wight County Schools had about 4,970 some students. So you can do a quick subtraction and see how many students we have acquired over the last 22 years. One of the things that's possibly afoot is a replacement for Westside Elementary School. Would you speak to that as a necessity? Would you support the building of a new Westside? Why or why not?
I absolutely support a new Westside. As the area is expanding, Smithfield High School is going to have to be the whole entire building. They're no longer going to be able to share the building. It's too many students. So providing that west side across from the high school will actually allow us to fully have the high school as the building itself in its entirety. And then that will provide, and west side actually needs a little update as well. When I went and visited, the STEM can be expanded, but they don't have enough room for the expansion. So I actually think that building that new west side will actually be able to expand their STEM program as well. I'm absolutely in support of having a new west side.
We all know how the county's growing, especially in the Newport District. There's a lot of building going up. There's a lot more students that are going to be coming into the system. Yes, I would support a new school because we're going to have more students than we can actually pack into the building.
simple but profound question that was two separate cards asking to ask each of you this, but essentially worded the same. What are the responsibilities of a school board member?
I thought we touched on that a little bit, but
We asked something about your qualifications, how you fill it, but speak to your understanding, each of you, of the responsibilities of a school board member.
so it's been a year since I've been on the board. It's taken about that time for me to actually fully understand what the role of a school board member was. Initially, you think, you are elected by your constituents, and you are their ear, you are their voice. However, there also are roles and responsibilities of the whole entire system. And so, again, we put policy into place. The implementation of that policy is through the superintendent and his staff as he delegates it. Again, the budget, which we have gone over, we hire and fire the superintendent. Those are the three biggest, the budget, the superintendent, and the policy are the top three things that a school board does. The every day-to-day implementation of what goes on in and out is why we hire a good superintendent. Speed of the ship, speed of the captain, speed of the ship. So if you get a good superintendent that knows what he's doing, he's going to make sure that it's going to be run very well. And I'm glad that we have Dr. Kramer, which I know he'll be a good superintendent in that aspect. So that is actually our role. And some people kind of get confused about who does the implementation and who puts the policy in place. Again, the school board puts it in place, but the day-to-day, the day in and day out is up to the superintendent and his staff. That's why he has the staff.
Mr. Wooster, your views of the responsibilities of a school board member.
Responsibilities of a school board member would be directly to those that they represent. You must be able to support the people that represent you in order to be a good board member. And when I say that, what do I mean? You've got to listen to the people. You've got to listen to their concerns. You've got to listen to their issues. You have to get that directed to the proper personnel. Because if not, then these people you represent are being failed. Now after that, yes, everything you said is correct. No board member operates independently. You adopt policy, you implement policy. And if you're correct, if you have an excellent school superintendent, it works great. It's a perfect world. And I've met Dr. Kramer and I have talked to him, and I've got good hopes for him right now. We actually had a very, very long conversation. It was very informative. So hopefully everything will work out with the superintendent and the school board will have a good working relationship with him.
Thank you, Mr. Wooster. On that, sticking with that topic, question directed to you, Ms. Dial. Why was the new superintendent hired knowing that an election was coming up in November? Why not wait and let the newly elected school board hire the superintendent?
That's a good question. Why wait? We were in place. We are an adequate, very good board. We're a sound mind, very intelligent. So I don't know why we would be waiting. Let's think about waiting. We were going to wait till November, have an acting superintendent to put one in place after the school started. That didn't make any sense to me. Why not put the superintendent? So I'm taking. Should I take offense that my constituents don't think that I'm adequate enough to be able to pick a superintendent? Matter of fact, Kramer was in my top 5. Matter of fact, my top 3. So I actually have a very good judge of character. So his T's were crossed and his I's were dotted. Excellent choice. I think we did a great job. So why wait? I think we did a great job at picking.
Mr. Rebuttal on the question of the timing of the hiring of the superintendent, should they have waited?
I really have no answer on that. I was not part of the hiring process. I cannot tell you why it was done so quickly. I have no comment on that.
Question directly to you, Mr. Wooster. What is your position if a parent or citizen from a district that you do not directly represent comes to you with a concern? Would you respond to them?
If a parent comes to me from outside of my district, then most definitely I will still listen to their concerns. However, I will pass those concerns on to their representative and make sure that they are aware that I am passing those concerns on.
Ms. Dial.
So when we get emails, we're actually all included and CC'd on them. So each constituent can see the questions come in. So oftentimes I'll see one, if John is CC'd and they're coming from Cartersville, then I let John answer the question. Or if they're Hardy, I let Mr. Cunningham, or if it's myself. I don't get a lot of my constituents sending me too many emails, but when they do, I will say, hey, I received your email, and I do respond. There's a difference though in asking a question, and then when I give a response, and then the same question keeps coming back, then I send it to the superintendent, but we're all CC'd on majority of the emails, so all of us can collectively see them together. So whoever's district that is, that representative can respond to the person's email.
Three questions assert a lack of diversity in certain student programs, honors program, AP classes, career technical education, GSST, that's an acronym I'm not familiar with, GSA, not enough Black, brown, and impoverished students in these programs. What, if anything, would you do to increase diversity within student programs? Who started last time?
It should be Mr. Wooster this time.
Mr. Wooster first.
I can't do that. As far as creating diversity, I'm not really sure how to go about it. I mean, you've got to have an interest in the program itself. Do your best to get people interested. To me, that is a tough question.
Ms. Dial.
Wooster's right, that is a tough question. But I think if you get it out there, take for instance my stance on CTE. Not only am I wanting to expand it as far as the programs, but also who's getting it. So for instance, culinary arts, right now it's only in high school. I'm like, why can it not be in elementary and middle schools? So Dr. Kramer and I were talking, and he said that we could do like summer school and have 5 weeks where, the kids can come in, the younger kids can come in. So I think it's about access and actual exposure. Maybe some of the kids don't know. For instance, when I was at OU, I didn't know much about the PA program. I wasn't exposed. I was actually going to do nuclear medicine until I was exposed to it. So sometimes I think it's more so of exposing the kids. They may not know. Why don't we do questionnaires and ask the kids what their interests are? Maybe they don't know about culinary arts at Smithfield High. Maybe they don't know about the STEM program. Maybe they don't know about the welding. So I think maybe we should get some stuff out there to try to poll the kids and see what their interests are. And maybe we can get more kids, whether they're black, brown, white, I don't really care their color or ethnicity. Exposure is exposure. If they're interested, they're interested. If they're not, they're not. So there's no color on that. So, but I think just getting it out there, maybe some kids just don't know.
Get ready, I'm going to turn it back over to you after one more round. We had 2 questions, one of each candidate, that in the course of the questions asserted violations of the law. I'm going to be honest, while I'm respectful of the citizens asking the questions, there's a thing called defamation law that I'm particularly mindful of as a newspaper publisher. The truth matters, and I'm simply not in a position to publicly air those, but I'll tell you this, the newspaper will absolutely look into both of them. And if there's anything there, it's newsworthy, you have my commitment that we will publish on it. But I think this is a fair question. Have either of you been convicted of a crime other than routine traffic misdemeanors, speeding tickets, motor vehicle violations? Yes or no?
Nope.
The only thing I have is the protective order violation I mentioned at the beginning of this debate.
Thank you. Herb?
This goes back to the issue with students' access to different things on their computers, and this is for both of you. With the many blockers on school computers, it makes it much more difficult for students to do research for both classes and academic clubs. Your position on why shouldn't the block just be put on those who are violating the system instead of all students? And in addition, to encourage academic growth, how do we expect growth academically in students if we limit access on their devices?
Mr. Wooster should go first.
Okay, when it comes to limiting access, you're not limiting access to everything. Anything that would be deemed sexually inappropriate, anything divisive in nature, anything that would be anti-police or rhetoric, anything of that nature, that is what you would be blocking. You would not be blocking, access to educational sites, legitimate educational sites. Anything, and I know you're going to run into it at some point, because whether you're in a biology class or you've got an anatomy and physiology class, you're going to have some exposure to sexuality. I get that. But what we need to do is focus on keeping the elementary students free from such material.
So what's the definition of sexually explicit content? I keep hearing that in a broader term, but what does that mean? Because what was presented to us was anatomy and physiology. I don't consider that sexually explicit content. So outside of that, I have not been shown anything. What does that mean? And as far as policing, what does that mean? Policing, that's a generalized, broad topic of that. Is that censorship? Because now we're starting to get into are we censoring certain things? But that is up to the parents. That's going to be different for every single person of what they deem as sexually explicit and what is policing. What does that mean? We're having different conversations in our homes. In this kind of climate, we're not having the same conversations. I have a different conversation with my sons about policing that some other parents may not have, and that's my right as a parent. So we have the filters in place. Again, if those parents don't want certain things on there, they cannot have it on those devices, but that's my stance on that.
Okay. For both of you again, and in a way, some of you touched on this at times during our discussions here this evening already, but this is specific. In your own mind, starting with you, Ms. Dial, what is classified as divisive topics? Political parties, critical race theory, LGBTQ rights, national monuments, etc.?
Definitely the first two that you mentioned, the monuments. Definitely the first two that you mentioned. Anything that is a sensitive topic that you're going to get different viewpoints, that's going to get a little heated between, certain, those are divisive topics. And I feel like, a lot of that should be at home, having that conversation with your kids at home first. That's a tough one, because when you have things that happen in our world and you're listening to the news, it's hard for kids not to see that anyway. But that's very tough. We're gonna have to figure out how to work together to discuss some of these topics if we decide that we're gonna do that. But those are very hard topics, even as adults. You can't speak about politics. People get up in arms about politics and one person doesn't agree with the other. We have a hard time talking about religion. Everybody has different religious beliefs. I think that's gonna be all the time. That's just not gonna be just with the kids, but that's with adults too. So that's just very difficult. I think we just need to respect one another's opinion. I mean, we're lacking a lot of respect and just courtesy and kindness. I judge a person's character on how they treat me when we disagree. Because it truly shows somebody's character. I've had people disagree and be like, you know what, we're just gonna agree to disagree, but they're very respectful. But then I've had the opposite and the other extreme. You can talk to me, I can talk to someone else, but we just have to start there where we're being able to talk to people with respect.
You're very correct. Everybody needs to be treated with respect. As far as divisive material goes, in my opinion, it is anything that is going to cause conflict, with one another, between students, between teachers, staff, whatever the case may be. What can be considered divisive? Politics can be considered divisive. Any teachings that promote one sex over another, one race over another, those can all be divisive. I don't think that anything like that should be in the schools. Anything that's going to create basically hate and discontent in the schools should not be there. You're absolutely right, though. Those conversations need to take place at home.
Thank you. This for both of you, we'll start with you, Mark. Appointing school board members is a necessary process from time to time. Traditionally, the board has interviewed candidates in closed meetings. Would you support future interviews for appointees being conducted in open session? Why or why not?
Well, it's an interesting question. First off, I just want to say that whether appointed or elected, you are still a board member with full duties of a board member that's elected. With that being said, you can have appointees and you can have them appointed in public so the public can get to meet them and see where they stand. So yes, I would support public appointing as far as school board members go.
So you can have them in public, but at the end of the day, the vote is within the board. Otherwise, if the public is voting, that's called an election. So there's a difference between an appointment and an election. So as being appointed, we only had two. And then I came on board, and as the members came off, we were appointed. Here we are at a special election. So the constituents, the stakeholders have their opportunity right now to pick somebody on the school board. If they want to do it in public, that's fine, you can get public input, but at the end of the day, the board members are voting. And that's their vote, and so that's how they vote. And it's been done prior to. All of a sudden, it's a problem now, and me and Vines were appointed, but Jackie Carr was appointed, and nobody said anything. And she made note of that she was appointed, and not one person said anything as such. And previous board members have been appointed before, so I'm not quite wondering why is it such an issue about appointments now when they weren't an issue before.
Okay, next question for both of you. The standards of quality of the Virginia Department of Education require having a curriculum that is aligned with the standards of quality. Wight County Schools has spent close to $130,000 in buying the curriculum from Hampton City Schools that is aligned to ensure that Wight's is. Wight's hasn't been for the last 6.5 years. Dr. Thornton was recognized for his achievements with the CTE program. How does that counterbalance his failure to make sure we had a curriculum aligned with the Virginia Department of Education Standards Equality. And that starts with you this time.
Read the second part of that as far as why was he announced as being, what was the second part of that?
For almost 7 years, we did not have a curriculum aligned with the Virginia Department of Education Standards Equality. How does that offset his achievements with the career and technical education program that ended up with the building being named after him?
So the building that was named after him was the CTE program. We didn't name the school, we named the building. That was Dr. Thornton's vision. He went out, didn't cost the taxpayers a dime for this extensive CTE program. He did that. He went and got $350,000 of welding equipment donated. He's the one that got the internships, the Newport shipbuilding, now has internship with the welding. He did all that and went out and got $2-3 million from Smithfield Foods. You can't discount someone for the work they did. He did that. He did that. So that's why the building was named after him. Now, I wasn't there on the board when they adopted the Hampton policy as far as the curriculum. So I'm not sure the background of why they did that, but I'm assuming that sometimes you want to incorporate something that you want smarter, not harder. So if they had something that they saw that was working, and I believe it was for the testing, you can change and make it your own. Why not get the foundation of what something was already working? If their testing scores were doing so well, why not incorporate that, and then you can expand on it and modify it to make it better.
As far as the curriculum goes, I would look at it from a cost-benefit analysis. Now, obviously, I'm not part of developing a curriculum, but my question would be, would it be more cost-effective to purchase a curriculum that, is already working? You might need to tweak it, specific for your agency. Or would it be better off to develop your own curriculum? Which is more cost-effective, which is quicker, and which is more beneficial? Now, with that being said, we should have had an adequate curriculum in place, but I don't see how that would compare to naming the center after Dr. Thornton.
This for both of you. From time to time, the Virginia Department of Education publishes directives. The state superintendent publishes directives. What is your position, and we'll start with you, Mark, on where does this put the school board relative to following these directives and ensuring that our school superintendent follows those directives?
When the VDOE puts out their directives, everything must be followed. The superintendent should be aware of that. They should be on top of it. However, the board ultimately employs the superintendent. So the board can ensure that the superintendent would be aware of these and follow those directives.
Yes, I agree. I've met with Dr. Kramer, and he is fully aware of the VDOE and their directives, so he's aware. He has to be on top of it. Dr. Thornton was as well, so he's fully aware.
Several questions about the Smithfield High School band, and this came up here in public comments. At the last school board meeting, Mr. Joyner retired many months ago. Position is still vacant. A couple of questioners say that there are broken instruments, maybe some being held together with duct tape. How big of a priority should it be to get the band program going strong again this time?
Yes, that should definitely be a priority. I spoke with Dr. Kramer, and he says that they're going to get somebody over there to get the program up and running. Yes, Mr. Joyner, that was a hit. That was a loss. My stepbrother was in the jazz band, and he did a great job. Part of that goes back to retention though. I know Mr. Jordan personally, and we have to make our teachers feel appreciated. And I think had he had, and I'm not necessarily speaking for him, but I think in general, if we're appreciating and paying our teachers appropriately, I don't think he would have left. So, but with that said, yes, I think the band, all programs, that's some kids' outlet. My sons love music, and they probably will be in band just like their sister was. So absolutely, I think that should be a priority. No kid should have instruments that have duct tape on them. We have a great system. We can pay. We have money. We're in a affluent area. We're a county that can pay and have all kids have working instruments. Absolutely.
Mr. Wooster.
Yes, I've actually had several parents talk to me about the issues that the band is experiencing. Same exact things that you mentioned, you know, torn straps, padding missing, poor instruments. This is definitely an important aspect. I mean, I've got a daughter that is in band. So that would definitely be an important aspect to fund. Now, it has come to my attention, or it's my understanding, that funding was set aside previously, a few years ago, for the band. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but that was what I was informed. Either way you look at it, the band needs to be funded. They need to have proper instruments, and they need to have proper instruction. From what I've been told, it's the seniors that are actually leading the rest of the students in the band class. And that should not happen. We need to get someone in there for band director.
This follows up on, somewhat on the question of appointments of school boards. Virginia law does allow localities entirely to appoint their school boards in lieu of electing their school boards. Would you support an appointed school board over the current elected school board, switching the way the school board is seated? Start with you, Mr. Wooster.
Asking if I would support an appointed school
Yes.
board versus elected.
Correct.
No, I would not.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Dial, appointed or elected?
Both, and that's what we currently have in place. When people step down, that's when people get appointed. And then that's why we have a special election right now. You're gonna have an election, I fulfilled someone else's. And if I'm electing somebody to represent me, I would think that they would have good sound mind to be able to pick somebody and select someone. So I don't have a problem with either or.
Okay, Mike keeps going in and out. Apologies, you all. Several wanted to know about latitude of teachers, staff, and that's about school board members expressing personal political opinions. Is that wise for teachers, staff members, even school board members to be outspoken on social media, in the classroom, about their personal political views? Ms. Dial.
No, you're representing the school. If you're a teacher, you're representing that school, just like when you get a job. Guess what your job does when you're getting hired? They're gonna go on your Facebook page, they're gonna go on your social media platforms, and they're gonna see what kind of person that they're hiring. So you don't want anybody, when we're talking about schools, you wanna make sure all the kids are supported. So no, and I've gotten emails about comments that were made, and some parents feel some kind of way. So in order to prevent one person people feeling weird, whether it's parents or teachers, no, we really should keep that off of social media.
Mr. Wooster.
Whether it be, board members, teachers, staff, anything political, it needs to be kept to yourself. It does not belong in the school. Politics does not belong in the school. As far as social media goes, I'm not going to go as far as you said, and I do understand that employees do look at your social media accounts. I'm a federal employee, trust me, they're all over mine. But social media, it's your personal page. You should be able to express whatever you want on your own personal page. Now, if it's in school, totally different, it's off limits at that point. So, no, I would be against anything of that nature.
Thanks to you both. Last question, ready to come back up. To Ms. Dial, you cited precedent regarding compensation to outgoing superintendents as being rationale for Dr. Thornton's. Question is, going forward, Dr. Kramer, when he leaves at some point, other future superintendents who might serve while you're serving on the school board, will you continue with that previous practice and precedent of compensating them at a higher per diem than any other departing school staff member gets?
So he actually got paid, just to state the fact, it was his full daily rate, not full time. But we have been in talks with that, our board members have spoken with that, on whether are we gonna expand the same courtesy to the teachers and the staff, because everybody's full daily rate is gonna be a little different, but can the budget support that? And so Laura Sullivan right now is actually working on something to see, are we going to extend the same courtesy? Are we going to change it from $30 to $50? There are a lot of options that we can do. However, when you're talking about the superintendent, we want to hire the best. Sometimes you will have to incentivize people to come. Now, Dr. Kramer's is not structured that way, and I can't tell you what people did previously. The same thing has been done previously with Pereira and McPherson. So we're in talks to figure out how that's going to look. That's one of the policy changes that the board has been talking about. Are we going to continue that, or are we going to set them to a partial? It has to say partial per diem, not full per diem. Full per diem is the same thing as saying full daily rate. So we're trying to figure out how that's going to work. Because we weren't presented with that before. All four of us were new except for Denise, so we did not know that full per diem meant full daily rate. So we are in the works to figure out how that's going to look in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Wooster. Future superintendents who depart while you're serving on the school board, should they be compensated any differently than, say, a classroom teacher who leaves?
As I stated in my answer previously, policy GCBD-R, unless that policy is changed or replaced, then that policy should be followed for all employees in Isle of Wight County school systems equally and fairly without regard to their position.
This is for both of you.
We'll start
With you, Mr. Wooster.
Uh,
What do you think about teachers and school staff hiding important information from students' parents and still maintaining some confidentiality with the student on any particular confidential issue?
My standpoint on that is I oppose it 100%. At no point in time should any teacher or staff keep information about a parent's child from that parent. The new policy coming out, going into effect the end of October, plainly states that as well. By taking a student and withholding information from the parent, you are driving a wedge between that parent-child relationship. That should never happen, nor should it be allowed to happen.
That's a bit of a tricky question, because in the medical field, and I know this is teaching, but that's an example, that when a child comes to you, do you think the child's going to be honest with me and tell me what's really going on with them when their parent is present? So from a medical standpoint, the child has the right at a certain age for the parent to step out, because I have to take care of the patient. It's tricky with kids as a parent. I absolutely want to know. But I don't know if there are comforts with a teacher. I would try to investigate to figure out what's going on in the household that the child would want to come to the teacher as opposed to talking with their parent. Maybe they could be in an abusive situation maybe they're afraid to speak out. So you gotta investigate and figure out what the issue is, because everything can't just be, it's just not right now, it's just not one way. So you gotta figure out, is it a safety concern? Because if it's a safety concern, then maybe the child has to be removed from the home. So you have to figure out what the issue is first before you could just put a stamp on it and say, no, you can't do that, or the teacher, the child can't just come to the teacher, because it could be a safety concern as well. So I think each case by case basis, it could be different.
Thank you. This for both of you. We'll start with you, Ms. Dial. Principals have overall control of a particular school. Teachers have control in the classroom. Periodically, there are issues that arise in the classroom where students are disruptive and have to be sent to the principal's office. Do you believe that teachers should be forced in any way to be abused in any fashion by students repeatedly when the principal does not take action and just summarily sends them back to the classroom?
Again, we need to figure out why the child is acting out. From the cases that we have seen, me being on the board, a lot of it is issues in the household, whether it's torn families, divorce. The children are really going through some stuff. They're going through some real life stuff. So we need to figure out what's going on and why the child is being disruptive. I think that's the start first. But if there seems to be no issue in a child just disruptive, then we need to find other ways. Are they bored? Do they have ADHD? We have behavioral modifications that you can put in place, 504 plans. Can we attach those to that? Because I know several kids that have ADHD that are just diagnosed, and then people will just teach them. People are just like, oh, they're just bad kids. That's not necessarily mean that they're bad kids, but they have a diagnosis attached to them. I don't want a stigma attached to that diagnosis as well. So we just have to figure out what's causing them to lash out. And then we've had some kids that we just had to expel, and some went to alternative school. So there are some options, but we need to figure out, and we need to adhere to these 504s and make sure that there aren't any underlying diagnoses, whether it be bipolar, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia. There are different diagnoses that can cause a child to act out. So we need to figure out, is it a mental health issue and why they're acting out? Are they bored in school because they have ADHD? Is that an issue? Can we give them other things to do? So I don't mind just putting a label on a child saying a child's just a bad child. We need to figure out, usually there's a cause. There's something that else is going on in that household, whether it just be of the child or it's of the situation that's causing the child to act out.
Yes, I agree. You definitely need to get to the root of the problem. You know, what is causing the issue? I don't believe that there are truly any bad children. Now, there's got to be a reason for it. And just like you mentioned, you know, you've got to search for it. It could be mental health related, it could be boredom, and it could be they just want attention. Whatever the case may be, determine what it is. And if you cannot determine any reason, if they're just habitually, you know, abusive or, you know, just disruptive, then yes, you will eventually have to expel or send to another location.
Thank you. For both of you, and we'll start with you, Mr. Wooster, do you think the school superintendent having authority to spend a certain amount of money without any oversight or approval from the school board is an appropriate policy? I believe right now, the limit that the superintendent can spend without getting prior school board authority is $200,000. So is there any time when the school superintendent should have the authority to spend outside of that?
I haven't really looked into that at this point, but being the school superintendent, you have to be able to spend a certain amount of funding in the event of emergencies or, you know, immediate needs. So yes, I do believe there should be a specific amount that they could spend without prior board approval. What that specific amount should be, I can't speak on that right now.
I agree. I think they should have some ability to have some leeway with a definitive amount. But if you look at over a $43 million budget and $200,000 is all he can, that's not a significant amount. So as far as what he can spend. So I think he should have some leeway for emergencies. There's not always a time where he can call, if something needs to be done. He can't always contact the board and say, hey, for every situation, every case of emergency that might come up. So yeah, I think he needs some leeway to be able to have that authority to do that.
Thank you. This question is for both of you. There are majority and minority groups when it comes to deciding what is going to be done. Should either group, majority or majority, hold sway over the other without some due consideration?
No, everybody has a voice. Everybody can voice their opinion.
I'm of the same standpoint. Everybody's voice counts the same.
Okay. Mr. Wooster, this will be for you first, for both of you. There have been some comments about diversity, etc. We have a diversity and equity coordinator within the school system. In your mind, what is the kind of policy that Alawite County schools should implement to achieve diversity? And that can sometimes imply race or sex-based hiring.
I think all hiring should be based on merit. I don't believe, skin tone should ever be an issue in selecting anyone for any given purpose.
I agree to a certain extent on that. The achievement gap we've seen is white and black. They showed black minority, black brown minority students, and they showed their Caucasian counterparts, and there was a significant gap. So when you have an inclusion and equity coordinator, if you're following the data, you're trying to close the gap. So those are some students that you may, and it could be Caucasians as well, but you're going to focus your attention on getting that gap closed. How are you going to close the gap if those are the kids that need the help? So it shouldn't be a black and brown, but if you're looking at data and we're trying to change and close achievement gaps, then you're going to have to focus some attention on those kids that are falling behind. But always merit. I stand high on merit. That's how I got to where I'm at.
Thank you.
Should civics be taught in public schools? Why or why not? Ms. Dial.
Yes. I mean, I had that when I was in high school. I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching that. I think it should be something that's good. I mean, how do you know? You need to know your history. So I think that's a good thing to still incorporate. I don't see why that's an issue with teaching that.
Mr. Wooster, question of civics being taught in public schools.
Yeah, I may be dating myself right now, but I think it was called social studies when I was in school. But yeah, most definitely, it should be taught, and it should be taught accurately.
This question is directed to you, Mr. Wooster. How will you benefit the school board based on your personal life experiences?
Well, that's a tough one, I've got to admit. In my history, as far as fire and EMS, I have taught many classes that included many different age groups, races, genders. So I am well diverse with, various people. That could be a benefit as well when looking at the students. I have taught classes which the student age range was 16 to 65, all in the same class. Not every person learns the same way, especially with that age gap. So you've got to determine different methods of getting through to each one at the same time. Again, with my position as a paramedic firefighter, I am structure oriented. I believe that would be a benefit as well.
Thank you, Mr. Wooster. Mr. Dial, rather than rebuttal, there was a question directly to you, fairly similar, but a little more specifically. How has your experience on the school board so far equipped you to continue serving the community in that capacity?
So it's taken me a while to get used to, it takes, I've been told, more than a year to actually know your position and role as a school board member. I had to figure out what I was supposed to do, what not to do, not to step on toes. So with my experience, I'm a parent, so I have a different perspective as being on the board, not just having full educators on the board, so I think I bring a parent perspective as well. I've been in school, I've been through high school, college, graduate school, so I know what that structure looks like. I also teach myself as far as having students as well. So I'm highly capable of still continually doing this job.
Thank you to you both. Several questions about masking, face masks. Heaven forbid we have another pandemic, but should we, first Ms. Dial, why did you vote to keep kids in masks? How do you square that with parental rights in schools? And then generally several others in the future. In case of future pandemics, should there be a resurgence of COVID, what your position will be on masking in the classroom?
That is correct. Following science and CDC guidelines, masks did save lives. We're still wearing masks. I have to wear them at work. And in certain aspects, we are, again, still wearing masks. So was I concerned about myself? No, but let me tell you, kids have to go to school. We have to look at all of the children and their safety. Like I said before, you don't know who has diabetes, you don't know people's medical history, you have no clue who's immunocompromised because you can't just see it on someone. Absolutely, I stand by, I did want the mask in place. These are children, they have to be there. Not leisurely, not somewhere else, not at home, not at the grocery store, I can't control that. But when I'm responsible for 5,500 students of going and trying to prevent deaths, that a COVID, a disease that killed over 600,000 people, you're absolutely right. I did mandate masks, I did not want them off, I didn't think that was the right time to remove the mask. You're absolutely right. But as an adult, being somewhere at a party, supporting the school, we all individually chose that. But the kids can't choose to go to school, they have to go to school. So to protect kids, like I said before, if it's saving one life, you're absolutely right. And you're right, hopefully we don't have another pandemic. Hopefully we will continuously learn from this pandemic that we had.
Mr. Wooster, your position on masking in future pandemics, anything similar to a pandemic?
When COVID first came out, nobody really knew how to mitigate the situation. As things progressed, the mask mandate was initiated. Now, once Governor Youngkin came in, he issued Executive Order number 2, which that would allow parent choice for masks in school. On that particular case, that puts everything back into the parent's hands. It doesn't say that nobody's going to wear a mask, and it doesn't say that everybody's going to wear a mask. It simply states the parents have control over whether their child wears a mask or not. Now, I can tell you firsthand, the mask that everybody was wearing, the cloth mask, it's useless. The only thing that's really going to serve any protection is an N95 mask. So you've got kids sitting in class all day in a mask. They're falling behind because of the mask. If you can't see the mouth and lips moving, then you lose your speech ability, you lose your reading comprehension. This order should have been followed, and unfortunately Ms. Dial did vote to keep the mask mandate in place in opposition to Executive Order 2. I would not have.
Okay, folks, we're just about to get to the end of our forum this evening, and I want to give each one of the candidates 3 minutes each to make closing remarks. I would just make this comment before they do and give them a chance to formulate their thoughts. Remember, the people on the school board spend taxpayers' money. A vote by a school board member affects the whole county. And it's important that people pay attention to what goes on with the budgeting process and attend school board meetings, board of supervisors meetings, commission meetings, etc. One of the biggest problems we have in the United States of America is citizen apathy when it comes to local government. And a guy named Thomas Jefferson said, it's at the local level that it really makes a difference that citizens are involved. So pass the word to your friends and neighbors who aren't here tonight and tell them to get educated, get involved in local government, and help make a difference. And remember, go vote on the 8th of November. All right, Mr. Wooster was first, I believe, in making his remarks at first, and we reversed that. So Ms. Dial, you get to go first now in your closing remarks.
So, very quickly, I'm gonna touch base on the mask. Is somebody trying to tell me as a medical provider for 10 years that the mask causes low comprehension is false? That is not true. My kids were in speech therapy and it did nothing of such effect to their speech therapy as far as their speech. So that's not true. The mask did not cause that. COVID in itself did, just like people tell me that mask caused anxiety and depression. That's false. The COVID process and what we underwent did, that caused it. As far as being fiscally responsible, we've been very great at that. Again, let's state the facts about us only spending 29% above standard of quality. That's the lowest out of all the neighboring districts. So we're actually being super fiscally responsible in that aspect. Now, closing, to be on the board, you need to have a leader, and a leader needs to possess a lot of different things. Some of the characteristics are loyalty, documentation, transparency, trust, responsibility. I always am reading books that are going to progress my professional development. I think we need to show what it looks like. We need to show our students examples of what it looks like. Not like how I've seen before. We can agree to disagree, but we need somebody in there that's for all of the students, not just a subset of the students, but every single entire student, the 5,500 students that we're responsible for. So with that said, I'm a very good leader. I feel like I can bring a lot to the county. I can bring a lot to the board. I have a lot of knowledge. Again, expanding that on that CTE, not only just to the elementary and middle schools, but also the programs that I can provide. Some of that to Dr. Coleman. Also working with our superintendent. We need a board that's going to be together. This divisive and division, it's not helping our county at all. Of this person, the northern county, the southern county, it's all about Wight County. A lot of people are very sick and tired of the division. When I was going around getting my petitions, what was very disheartening is I had a neighbor that said, my kids don't go to public school because I've heard of Isle of Wight. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? This racial division that we have in our county, people are tired of it. I'm tired of it. And I'm not going to keep being silent, let people try to silence me on that. Because you're trying to avoid conflict, but it's not about that. We are all on the same, we just need to sit down, talk about it, but people are tired. I've had people apologize to me about how I'm being treated with certain things that is going on. What are we doing? We need to show our kids the example. You need to be the example. There's no politics here. I'm not running on a ticket. Nobody should be running on anybody's Republican, Democrat. We're not running on tickets. These are kids. They're very impressionable. This is an important time in their life, and what we do now matters how we develop them as adults.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, we are currently living in an upside down world, where up is down and right is wrong. We're living in a world where people support making sexually explicit and divisive material available to our children in schools, and are steadily chipping away at the rights of parents. We're living in a world that wants to force biological males into biological female sports, restrooms, locker rooms, all under the guise of sexual discrimination. All this while parents' concerns are falling on deaf ears. At the end of the day, everyone must decide if they agree with this or not. On November 8th, when you vote your next Isle of Wight County School Board representative, you must decide if you are satisfied with the current trajectory of your representative supporting everything I have mentioned, as my opponent has demonstrated by her voting history. Or do you want a representative who will listen to citizens' comments and concerns, fight to remove sexually explicit and divisive materials from our schools, and be an advocate for parental rights and our children's education and safety? I want to thank everyone for this opportunity, and I hope I can count on your vote come November 8th.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Ariane Williams and Jennifer Boykins for helping collect up the questions that were given to us to ask the candidates. And I want to thank Ms. Dial and Mr. Wooster for their being here tonight and their forthright answers. And we look forward to one of you winning at the polls on the 8th of November. Everybody go vote. Tell your neighbors and friends to do so.